Today we're going to look at how I diagnosed and fixed an Underboost code on a 2020 Ford Explorer. Stay tuned all the way to the end because the fix is going to surprise you. Recently I had to look at a 2020 Ford Explorer with a check engine light on. Now the vehicle was about a year old and had about 14,000 miles on it. And if you work at a dealership, you know that you're required to use FDRS on this vehicle. For anyone not familiar with what FDRS is, it stands for Ford Diagnostic and Repair System. It's an internet-based diagnostic scan tool, and because it runs over the internet, it is very slow and time-consuming. I retrieved codes on this vehicle, and it had a P0299 turbocharger underboost condition in the memory of the PCM. I usually look at freeze frame data if it's available to kind of get an idea of what conditions the vehicle was under when the fault occurred, or what they were doing with the vehicle at the time. And I need to switch the scan tool from metric to English standard sometime, but I haven't done it yet here. It looks like it was under a 31% load. That'd be a fairly light cruising load. Short fuel trim was -3, map pressure was 85 kPa, or that'd be 12.3 psi. Vehicle speed 107 kph, that's 66 miles an hour if you're an American. Intake air temperature was 20 degrees Celsius, that's 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Runtime was only a minute. The engine coolant temp was 83 degrees Celsius, so that'd be 181 degrees Fahrenheit. So it probably had already been driven that day, because you're not going to go from a cold engine to 181 degrees in 1 minute runtime. Long fuel trim is 4.69, that's perfectly normal. Engine RPM is a touch over 3,400, nothing crazy there, but probably either accelerating or downshifting. But they're not accelerating very hard if it's only showing a 31% load. Throttle position was at 90%, and that one kind of flags an issue to me because 90% is a huge amount of throttle for only a 31% load on the vehicle, or calculated load. Let's see if there's anything else useful here. Looks like ambient air temperature was 3 degrees Celsius that day, and that'd be about 37 degrees Fahrenheit, so a fairly warm winter day here in the Midwest. Okay, let's get back out of freeze frame data here. I tried performing a Kion engine running test because sometimes that will flag an issue with a sensor that a Kion engine off test won't, but unfortunately on this vehicle it didn't show anything additional. It passed the test other than the P0299, the Underboost code in memory. I ran the vehicle on Oasis just to see if there was any known issues with this code, and it came back with two things, a special service message and a TSB. The special service message, 49427, was for the actuator clip coming off of the wastegate linkage, and the wastegate linkage actually coming off and causing this P0299 or other boost related codes to set in memory. Inspection of the wastegate actuator and the linkage and the clip, it all looked fine. The clip was still in place. Everything was good with that. The TSB 20-2246 was specifically for the 2.3 Ecoboost in the 2020 Explorer for vehicles built before July 14th, 2020, which this one was, and setting the DTC P0299 Underboost in the PCM. The TSB said this code could set in these vehicles due to a software issue, and the fix was to update the PCM to the newest level of software. So the next thing we tried was updating the PCM to the newest level of software. You know, if you clip out all the places where FDRS gets stuck for 5 minutes and speed the video up to 4 times normal speed, it really doesn't look like too bad of a scan tool. In real life, this takes quite a bit longer. For anyone who has never done a software update on a PCM, the instrument cluster looks like the vehicle's possessed while you're doing it. So the software has been successfully updated. So now I'm going to make sure that the original code and any other codes that may have set while we were updating the software are cleared out of the memory. And our Kion engine off test comes back with a passcode. At this point I set up data logger on the car so I could watch boost and desired boost, and took the vehicle for a test drive and made a recording. So if we take a look at the recording I made, when we step into it, turbocharger boost desired goes up to 27 psi, but if you look at it, actual boost is only 12 psi, and that's a huge difference. And I don't think these numbers are probably compensated for atmospheric pressure. Now we're at about 1,000 feet elevation here in the Midwest, so it runs pretty close to 14 psi. So desired boost is actually 13.6 psi, and we're actually pulling a negative 1.3 psi of boost or vacuum. If we look at a graph of the recording, when we start stepping into it, boost levels keep up for a little while, but they start falling off as more and more boost and airflow is required. If we play the recording and watch boost versus desired boost, you can actually see the boost levels start falling off after a couple of seconds. There's also a point after about 5 seconds of boost being significantly lower than desired boost that the desired boost level falls off steeply, and that's when the PCM decided there was a problem with the boost level and it flagged a code in memory and stopped requesting boost. At this point it was obvious the TSB didn't fix the problem, and we decided to inspect the turbocharger and the air tubes. So the first tube pulled off was the tube from the air filter to the turbocharger compressor inlet, and that's when we saw this. Right at the end of the tube where the air goes into the turbocharger, there is a plastic insert with fins that I'm not sure if it's supposed to straighten the air going into the turbocharger or give it a little bit of a swirl as it's going into the turbocharger. But this had dislodged inside that tube and was wedged in there sideways. And if you put it back in the tube correctly, it also was really loose. And it's kind of hard to catch on video how loosely it fits inside this tube. And I don't think it's supposed to. It's supposed to be molded directly into the rubber. It reminds me of those things you used to see back in the 80s advertised. I think they used to call them tornadoes. They were supposed to give the air a spin as it went into your throttle body or carburetor and add 15 horsepower and better mile per gallon and all that. I don't think they actually worked, but... So we ordered a new tube for the vehicle. And you can see on the new one it still has that piece in it, but it's firmly molded in place on this one. If I had this on my own vehicle and it wasn't under warranty, I think I probably would have just thrown that piece away and put the tube back on, because I really can't believe it does very much. So all that was really left was to take the vehicle for a test drive and see what kind of boost numbers it generates now. I took it out and I floored it for 5 or 6 seconds from a rolling start. So from the recording I made, and desired boost is on the bottom and boost is on the top, you can see there's a little turbo lag at the beginning, but boost pressure comes up and it keeps up with the engine demand for airflow now. The little bump in the middle is where I think the computer actually backed the throttle off a little bit or opened the wastegate to prevent an overboost condition. That's normal. So what kind of boost numbers does it make now? The highest boost it actually measured was 38.5, and that's where it either backed the throttle off a little or started to open the wastegate in order to reduce boost. I've got a lot of great stuff coming up, so please subscribe. Let me know what your thoughts are here. Was the fitting sideways in the tube when they stuck it on at the factory? Or did it get loose and get sideways in the tube later? Personally, I think the fitting loosened up and got sideways in the tube later. I think the rubber tube swelled with heat, and over time eventually that fitting broke free. Once it broke free, I think the fins inside of it actually made it spin inside the tube. And it kept getting looser and looser until eventually it could bounce around enough that it could cock sideways in there and get wedged in there by the air pressure. But let me know your thoughts or what you think. Have you ran into this or something similar? As always, have a great week and take care.